Most people think integrity is about reputation. But Iqbal shows us something deeper. Integrity is the architecture of the self. Without it, strength collapses, discipline fractures, and purpose dissolves. Integrity is not something we show the world. It is something that holds us together when the world is not watching. This episode explores Iqbal's vision of integrity as the internal structure that gives Khudi its weight. Integrity is the alignment between thought, word, and action. It is the refusal to betray inner truth, even when silence or compromise feels easier. When integrity is strong, the self gains gravity. When it weakens, the self fragments. Today we continue our journey through Khudi, Allama Iqbal's masterpiece on the awakening of the self. This is episode 37. Here we explore integrity, not as a rule imposed by morality, but as the foundation that lets the self endure pressure, resist fragmentation, and walk toward destiny without fear. Take a breath. Let these reflections settle inward, and allow the architecture of your own self to reveal where strength must grow. Integrity is not a virtue added to the self. It is the architecture of the self. Without integrity, strength collapses, discipline fractures, purpose dissolves. Iqbal understood that the self survives not by power alone, but by coherence. Coherence arises when what the self thinks, what it says, and what it does move without contradiction. The self that lives in contradiction loses weight. Weightless cells drift. Drifting cells cannot endure pressure. The self learns that integrity begins internally. External morality without internal alignment is performance. Performance collapses when struggle intensifies. The self understands that integrity is a private battle. An agreement with the self, made away from witnesses. Witnesses confirm reputation, but integrity confirms identity. The self realizes that every dishonesty weakens inner structure. Weak structure absorbs pressure poorly. Pressure reveals truth. The self that deceives fears exposure. Fear dissolves courage. Courage diminished constricts destiny. Integrity requires courage to tell the truth inwardly before telling it outwardly. Inner truth steadies will. Steadied will clarifies direction. The self learns that compromises made against conscience accumulate quietly. Accumulation creates fracture. Fracture grows into collapse. Integrity demands refusal to betray values for convenience. Convenience tempts surrender. Surrender dissolves becoming. The self recognizes that integrity sharpens judgment. Judgment clouded by rationalization loses force. Clear judgment protects the self from its own impulses. Integrity is not rigidity. It is alignment with truth. Truth adjusts action without corrupting character. The self learns that integrity must survive loneliness. Loneliness tests sincerity. Sincerity confirmed deepens authenticity. The self understands that integrity is a long discipline. Moments of honesty are not yet integrity. Integrity is consistency under pressure. The self sees that integrity cannot be borrowed. It cannot be imitated. It must be built through difficult choices repeated. The self learns that integrity creates trust. Trust is authority. Authority is influence. Influence is quiet power. The self realizes that integrity turns weakness into direction. Weakness acknowledged becomes strength in formation. Strength formed becomes character. The self understands that integrity cannot be maintained without sacrifice. Sacrifice clarifies value. Value clarified preserves identity. The self notices that integrity guards against self-deception. Self-deception corrupts purpose. Purpose corrupted confuses destiny. The self learns that integrity makes the self predictable. In the best sense, predictability creates safety. Safety encourages cooperation. Cooperation multiplies impact. The self recognizes that integrity resists fragmentation. Fragmented selves cannot sustain vision. Vision sustained requires unity. The self understands that integrity is not about perfection. It is about direction. Direction aligned survives failure. The self realizes that integrity deepens presence. Presence grounded commands respect. Respect earned confirms maturity. The self understands integrity is silent strength, the kind that holds the self even when nothing else does. The self begins to recognize that integrity is tested in small decisions long before big ones. Small dishonesty creates precedent. Precedent shapes habit. Habit becomes identity. The self learns that every compromise against inner truth expands its own shadow. Shadows demand concealment. Concealment drains energy. Drained energy weakens will. The self understands that integrity keeps the self whole. Wholeness is strength. Fragmentation is exhaustion. The self realizes that integrity is threatened not by external forces, but by internal permission. Permission given once becomes easier to repeat. Repetition forms erosion. The self sees that integrity requires boundaries. Boundaries protect values. Values protected shape destiny. The self learns that integrity matures when the self stops negotiating with what it knows is wrong. Negotiation weakens clarity. Clarity preserved strengthens resolve. The self understands that integrity demands transparency with oneself. Without internal honesty, external honesty becomes performance. The self recognizes that integrity stabilizes emotion. Emotion without integrity distorts reality. Integrity filters impulse and purifies reaction. The self sees that integrity deepens responsibility. Responsibility accepted matures character. Character matured attracts trust. The self learns that integrity survives discomfort. Discomfort is training. Training strengthens conviction. Conviction confirms purpose. The self understands that integrity creates inner peace. Peace is not absence of difficulty. Peace is absence of duplicity. The self realizes that integrity gives strength to endure misunderstanding. Being misunderstood, yet remaining aligned, demonstrates maturity. The self sees that integrity sharpens long-term thinking. Short-term gain often violates principle. Principle preserved guides lasting progress. The self learns that integrity simplifies life. Lies complicate. Honesty clarifies. Clarity reduces burden. The self understands that integrity strengthens memory. Clean conscience reduces emotional noise. Reduce noise improves judgment. The self realizes that integrity forms trust within the self. Self-trust is foundation. Without self-trust, even success feels unstable. The self sees that integrity shapes environment. People adjust naturally around consistent souls. Consistency becomes silent leadership. The self learns that integrity protects against regret. Regret arises when the self abandons truth. Truth preserved heals regret before it forms. The self understands that integrity cultivates courage. Courage emerges when nothing internal contradicts action. The self realizes that integrity attracts meaningful relationships. Meaningless connections seek convenience. Meaningful ones seek alignment. The self sees that integrity evolves as understanding deepens. Growth refines values. Refinement strengthens coherence. Coherence stabilizes presence. The self learns. That integrity prevents collapse under temptation. Temptation tests structure, structure maintained. Ensures continuity. The self understands. That integrity is internal freedom. Freedom from deception. Freedom from guilt. Freedom from division. The self realizes. That integrity supports destiny. Destiny responds to unified identity. Identity unified. Moves confidently into the unknown. The self understands. Integrity is not a rule. It is a foundation. Without it, nothing stands. With it, everything endures. There comes a moment when the self understands. That integrity is not restraint. It is liberation. Liberation from falsehood. From conflict within. From the burden of pretending. The self realizes. That integrity strengthens identity. More than achievement ever could. Achievements fade. Identity persists. The self understands. That without integrity, success becomes hollow. Hollowness reveals fragility. Fragility collapses under scrutiny. The self sees. That integrity is the quiet companion of inner dignity. Dignity grows when the self refuses to betray what it knows to be right. The self learns. That integrity requires continuity. Continuity of values. Continuity of behavior. Continuity of intention. Continuity creates strength. Beyond appearance. The self recognizes. That integrity cannot be bought, persuaded, or inherited. It must be lived. Every day. Especially when unseen. The self understands. That integrity carries cost. Cost reveals seriousness. Seriousness reveals character. Character influences existence. The self discovers. That integrity expands presence. Presence grounded in truth. Creates calm confidence. Confidence without arrogance. Attracts respect. The self realizes. That integrity transforms fear. Fear loses power when there is nothing to hide. Transparency disarms anxiety. The self sees. That integrity shapes destiny as deeply as discipline shapes talent. Talent unused declines. Integrity unused decays. But when lived, it becomes indestructible. The self learns. That integrity is the bridge between intention and action. Without the bridge, intention remains fantasy. With the bridge, action becomes meaning. The self understands. That integrity is tested whenever no one is watching. Those unseen moments build the deepest structure. Structure unseen supports the entire self. The self realizes. That integrity must survive advantage. Advantage tempts compromise. Compromise fractures coherence. Coherence lost is hard to rebuild. The self sees. That integrity refines ambition. Ambition without integrity corrupts. Ambition with integrity uplifts. The self learns. That integrity is the anchor. In times of uncertainty, uncertainty confuses direction. Integrity restores clarity. The self understands. That integrity outlasts reputation. Reputation is perception. Integrity is reality. Reality sustains value. When perception changes, the self realizes. That integrity gives the self a moral center of gravity. Gravity stabilizes movement. Movement stabilized creates progress without chaos. The self sees. That integrity binds purpose to action. Purpose unsupported remains abstraction. Action unsupported remains noise. Their union creates meaning. The self understands. That integrity is not perfection. It is devotion. Devotion to truth. Devotion to alignment. Devotion to becoming whole. And finally, the self recognizes. Integrity is the quiet light that guides the self through darkness. It holds the self together when everything else demands collapse. And through integrity, the self becomes worthy of the destiny it seeks.